Dear Jana, dear Vincent, welcome and thank you for saying yes to this conversation about understanding and building learning organizations in the public sectors. And Vincent, you're expert in this field. What would you say are the core characteristics of learning organization and why are they crucial for the public institutions?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to share my experience with you on building learning organization. So what is a learning organization? Well, I will say that's an organization that continuously learn and transform itself. So it learns not only at the individual level, but it learns also at the team level, at the organizational level, and also through its entire ecosystem. So when we talk about learning, we talk about developing new knowledge. So such kind of organization also needs to manage the flow of knowledge in their organization. So knowledge is at the core also, while the management of knowledge is at the core of becoming a learning organization. Now, we cannot say that some organizations are learning organizations and some organizations are not. I believe every organization needs to learn, otherwise it will rapidly disappear. But some of them do it much more systematically and have a stronger learning capability than others. Now, why is it important for institutions to become learning organization? Well, I think we are living in a world, so sometimes we refer to it as a VUCA world or a BANI world, so where there is a lot of risk ongoing, there is a lot of changes happening very rapidly and very high extent. And organization needs to be prepared or agile enough or responsive enough to be able to adapt to all these changes. And adapting means that we need to learn to unlearn and to relearn to be able to adapt to all these changes. Now, so that's a very important point. And if we look back also at the core managing knowledge, knowledge is used for every decision we make. So the better quality of knowledge we have available to us, the better decision we will make. And so this also improve, particularly when you need to make fast decision. They need to do that. And then directly also by better managing the flow of knowledge, institution can become more innovative. And there will be a need for more innovation to be able, again, to find solution to all the challenges that we face.
Thank you. And Jana, you're CEF director, and CEF is learning organization or have been doing transformation of a learning organization for the last 10 years. Is in the center of how you function, in the center of people, system, structure. And based on this experience, what would you say are some of the crucial steps that public institutions have to take, firstly to initiate, but then also to drive the transformation into a learning organization?
Well, Petra, it's nice to have you here at the CEF, and also Vincent, nice to have you here at the CEF. And first, I would like to actually address why CEF is addressing this with public institutions at all, with ministries of finance, central banks, and tax administrations. It is because we feel that in order for these institutions to manage funds, to manage finances, they need to be able institutions. They need to be able to deliver on their mandate. And this is the reason actually that we started to focus on this topic as well with our target institutions. What is fundamental here that institutions do? Well, first, they need to understand the concept. And CEF, when we started to discuss this concept with governors and ministers of finance, we started at the point when we actually discussed our strategy, our strategic direction. And there we explained that actually CEF's value added is to support institutions to become learning organizations. And through that, actually, leadership of these institutions learned about the concept. Now, through that, some leaders heard the message that this is something that would be relevant for them. And through that, then they thought, okay, where they are and where they want to be. Right, and by understanding that, then some of them, actually now we have 2 institutions, one already in the 2nd year, one in the beginning. They started to understand what steps they need to make. And of course, in doing these steps, there is many things to unlearn, as you mentioned, many things to learn, many things to test, and then ultimately implement, right, and embed in the institution. In order to help institutions to become learning organizations or go through this process, we actually develop methodology of how to support institutions to become learning organizations. And this methodology has 6 building blocks. I will just name them to understand. Number 1 is governance and culture. Number 2 is resources for learning. Number 3 is knowledge partnerships or partnerships for learning. There's number 4 is understanding what knowledge institution has and what knowledge institution needs. So it's capturing, packaging, and sharing knowledge. And then number 5 is communicating knowledge. And number 6 is actually learning loops or monitoring and evaluation. And this is actually the focuses then that we do with institutions that they are interested.
And they are not following each other, but they are all being implemented together, right? So
Right. And it's really not needed that they are implemented in full. It's just guidance, basically.
And both of you already mentioned learning several times. So we have knowledge, we have learning. And Vincent, based on your experience, what can public institutions do to capture this sustainable learning culture? And also, can you share some of the principles and practices that can support also the long-term growth and goals of the institutions?
Yeah, so I think, as Jana already mentioned, there is a need for institutions to realize the value of engaging towards more systematically managing their knowledge and also continuously and systematically learning. So there needs to be a strong leadership commitment to start with. And also, I will say, a clear vision and an action plan. So it's not something we say, well, we will do when we have time, but we have clear goal and objective. And I think that's one of the pillars also to monitoring and evaluation to see how we are progressing towards this. But I mean, what is really at the core is to somehow have a culture where people are open to share, to learn from each other. So developing a culture where there is some level of psychological safety, where people feel that there is trust, that they can openly share what works, what didn't work so well, and show that they don't know something and openly say, well, I don't know, and I would really like to learn from each other. So such kind of culture, I mean, that's not something that happen overnight. That's something that you need to develop. And once again, the leaders have an important role to play to walk the talk behind this. And what I believe is also as important as a culture is finding ways to embed the learning mechanism in the way that people work. So learning should not be, or knowledge sharing should not be seen as something we do in addition to our work. It should be embedded into the way we work. And unfortunately, very often it's not done that way. So very often learning and knowledge sharing are done, well, if time permits, or are not perceived really as a top priority. So of course, there needs some need for resources, and I think some form of recognition also, particularly for the one who are showing the example of knowledge sharer or sharing their also, I mean, learning from all kind of situations. So I think it's a combination of a lot of different components. Different institutions, and maybe some of them might be stronger on some aspect and weaker in others. So you really have to understand what's the current culture, what are the current processes, and then find ways to strengthen this learning capabilities.
Vincent, you mentioned leadership role, and Jana, you being a director. So from your experience and expertise, what would you say, what is the crucial role of a leader in driving this transformation towards a learning organization? And also, can you name some concrete actions that can be done from the leader's side that can support its development?
Certainly, the leader has to set the tone. Basically, the leader has to be the believer. You know, if you don't believe in the power of knowledge and the power of learning, then of course you cannot go on this journey. Because as Vincent mentioned, it's all about culture, a lot about culture. What kind of culture exists in an institution? And in this respect, one needs to, leader needs to set the vision, you know, where to go, where we want to go, and then define steps, correlate with the strategic direction of development of the institution, so that this learning part is not coming on top of it, but really is intertwined. This is very crucial. Then leader, as you mentioned, has to assure resources. And by resources, I do mean funds for learning, but I also mean time. Often, you know, this part of learning is an afterthought. There are so many important things that you need to do immediately in your daily life at work, right? And often learning can become afterthought. But if a leader is serious about institutional development, one really needs to set aside time. And that means not only for team members, but for myself, for, you know, to be role model, basically, to walk the talk. This is very, very important, to walk the talk. And then to monitor how things are going and also celebrate successes. And what is important, also point out successes, because being on the path to be a more advanced learning organization, it's not easy, really. So often it does not feel enjoyable. But then we need to look back every now and then and say, look what we all achieved. And this is something that I do often at the CEF, to compare what it was 10 years ago and what it is now.
And we all know that change takes time, and we always faced with some obstacles and barriers. And Jana, again, based on your experience, what are some of the most common obstacles, barriers that public institutions faced when they are transforming to a learning organization?
Well, learning means change, and change is often associated with unknown. You really don't know what is going to be in the future. Even if it's going to be good, you are still afraid maybe something goes wrong. So this fear of change, to manage this is extremely important, to address this and to manage it appropriately. The other barrier in institution is that we as individuals, we like working in groups, and this could be smaller teams. And often these smaller teams, departments, if you want, they become silos. And you know, to get rid of these silos and assure that knowledge travels throughout the institution is quite a task, to tell you. Surprisingly hard. Even with the CEF, we are focused in this area, and still we struggle, let alone with the public institutions that are more traditional and they are much bigger. Then, of course, one barrier can be resources. As I mentioned, you need funds, you need time, and in public institutions that are so submerged in daily operations, it's hard to set aside time. Because one is always frugal in public sector, and institutions that we deal with are ministries of finance. They are, of course, very careful about spending money. Spending money on their own institutions sometimes is a challenge. So these are types of obstacles that we encounter.
Thank you also for exposing these barriers and also how to address these barriers in order to overcome them. And I think what is also might be beneficial to our target audience, you already talked about the added value of how can public institution become a learning organization. But can you tell us a bit more how can this transformation into a learning organization also encourage and empower public institution in Western Balkans in the EU integration process?
Yeah, certainly. This is a very good question because, of course, institutions to develop into learning organizations, it's not the end of itself that there is a learning organization, right? An institution is a learning organization. A learning organization, an institution that is focused on its own learning, it's an able institution. It's an institution with capacity. Therefore, this institution is able to contribute towards the goals that country has. In the Western Balkans, of course, now countries have aspirations to become EU members. They have to go through many processes. Also, one area of their work is to work on their reform agendas. Of course, when we are talking about reforms, reforms are aspirations where we want to be, with understanding where we are. And what is change? Change is the same. You know, you basically define where you want to be with knowledge where you are. Having knowledge in this area of learning and learning organization actually helps officials in public institutions to better manage implementation of reforms, because they are able to correlate towards how to manage change and how to support learning and different way of working. And at the end of the day, what is reform? Reform is something that you want to achieve in the future in certain area. It's a change, a better state, right? And of course, with stronger institutions, with institutions that have knowledge in this area, this becomes more organic.
Thank you, Jana. And also, Vincent, would you like to add, from observing and being in this field on your own, would you like to add anything else to addition what Jana already mentioned?
Well, I think, yeah, it's people might feel a bit skeptical to start with. I mean, with, as you said, with any kind of change that they are faced with. But I think they will rapidly see the value once they engage into such kind of activity. So I believe it's important to sometimes to get some quick wins and be able to share these success stories, and people will better relate to it and see the value it can bring to them. So making it clear what's in it for everyone, and I think they will realize it rapidly, and that sometimes we say knowledge share is knowledge squared. So it means that, well, when we share knowledge, we don't lose this knowledge, but we exchange it, and this helps us also grow individually and grow as a team and grow as an organization. So I believe there is a benefit for everyone.
Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.